The first red flag showed up exactly 1 week after I broke ground. I was standing on my beachfront lot, my dream lot, watching the foundation crew pour concrete, when a white Lexus SUV pulled right up to the edge of the property line. Out stepped a woman in oversized sunglasses, a floral sun hat that looked like it belonged in a costume shop, and a clipboard like she was leading a school field trip. "Excuse me," she called out, heels clacking over gravel as she marched straight toward me. "You can't block the access path. That's legally designated for public beach access." I wiped my hands and raised an eyebrow. "There's no easement here. I own this lot outright all the way to the dunes. Bought it from the county." She shoved the clipboard in my face like it was a badge. "I'm Priscilla Marlowe, HOA president for Seabreeze Shores. This trail has been used for beach access for 2 decades. It's common knowledge." I looked at the sand path she pointed to. It wasn't a trail, it was a worn-down shortcut people had made through the brush. My property deed was crystal clear. No easement. No right-of-way, just me, the lot, and the view of the ocean. "Sorry, Priscilla, common knowledge isn't a legal claim. This is private property now." Her lips twisted like I'd insulted her ancestors. "You'll be hearing from the board." I didn't even bother replying. I walked back to the crew and told them to keep going. I figured it was just some entitled HOA president trying to puff her chest. I had no idea what was coming. By the next morning, orange spray paint had shown up along the edge of my lot, marking a proposed public corridor. A handwritten sign staked into the ground read, "Future Access Path, Seabreeze Shores HOA." No one had asked permission. No one had notified me. I yanked the stake out and tossed it in the trash. 2 days later, I came back to find a chain strung across my driveway with a laminated notice zip tied to it. "Cease construction until public access dispute is resolved." It was signed again by Priscilla Marlowe. I called the sheriff. He came out, took one look, and shook his head. "They got no legal authority to block you. This is a civil matter, but I'll file the report." He helped me cut the chain, but the damage was done. The construction crew had already packed up for the week, spooked by the drama. I lost 4 days of work and had to pay them a premium to reschedule. That night, I started digging into Priscilla and the HOA. Turns out, Seabreeze Shores HOA had been trying to get a public beach access point for years. Their main access path had washed out in a storm 5 years ago, and the county refused to fund a new one. Their solution: hijack private lots using historical use claims and pressure tactics. They tried it on a retired vet 2 streets over. He hadn't had the stomach for a legal fight and sold the land cheap. They picked the wrong guy this time. I'm Tobias Zane. I'm a civil engineer, and I've spent the last 15 years working with zoning boards, code enforcement, and surveyors. I know the playbook, and I was about to burn theirs to the ground. The first official letter arrived in a cream envelope with a gold-embossed return address from the Seabreeze Shores HOA. Inside was a typed demand for unimpeded community access to the shoreline, citing something called prescriptive easement rights and alleging I was interfering with neighborhood tradition. The language was polished, but the threat was clear: cave or we'll bury you in paperwork. I brought the letter to my attorney, a quiet, no-nonsense guy named Marcus who specialized in property disputes. He read it once, then tossed it on his desk like it was junk mail. "They're fishing," he said. "Prescriptive easement only works if no one ever challenged it. Your title's clean. No easement recorded, no lawsuit filed before your purchase, no continuous open access under claim of right. They've got nothing but desperation." I nodded. "So what do I do?" "Start documenting everything. Photos, timestamps, trespassers, interactions. If they want a legal war, we'll give them one." That same afternoon, I installed motion-activated cameras along the perimeter, one facing the path they kept trying to revive. Another pointed at the rear of the lot, where a few residents had started showing up to watch the surf, like they just happened to wander into a construction zone wearing tennis shoes and holding iced coffees. The cameras paid off faster than I expected. That Friday at exactly 7:30 in the morning, one of the construction workers called me. "Boss, we got a situation. Someone spray painted the equipment, again, and the porta-johns tipped over." I pulled up the footage. A group of 3 teenagers, none over 17, had walked straight onto the property at 2 in the morning, carrying backpacks. They tagged the backhoe, flipped the portable toilet, and vanished toward the HOA side of the community. I turned the footage over to the county deputy, who recognized one of the kids immediately. His mother was on the HOA board. That opened the floodgates. The sheriff's office sent out a deputy to take statements. The mother tried to downplay it, calling it harmless mischief, but the deputy wasn't buying it. Property damage, trespassing, and vandalism weren't misdemeanor pranks. They were charges, especially when it involved commercial equipment and a construction site. Meanwhile, I filed an injunction against the HOA to prevent further interference. Marcus drafted it in a single afternoon. The judge signed off within 3 days. Legally, they were barred from making any physical alterations, posting signs, or stepping foot on my property. But Priscilla wasn't done. The following week, I received a certified letter from the County Code Enforcement Office. It claimed that my build site violated coastal vegetation preservation ordinances and demanded an immediate halt to construction pending review. I drove straight to the county office and asked for the report. The clerk, a kind woman with frizzy hair and a Diet Coke habit, handed it over with an apologetic glance. "The complaint was submitted anonymously," she said. "But it does reference drone footage and claims of dune grass destruction." I flipped through the photos. Aerial shots, clearly taken by a drone, focused on the edges of my lot where the brush had been cleared before the concrete pour. The problem? That brush wasn't dune grass. It was invasive ice plant. The county had classified it as non-native and encouraged removal. I asked to speak with the coastal inspector, a guy named Darren who'd been working the district for over a decade. We met the next day on the lot. He checked the flagged area, compared it to his field manual, and laughed under his breath. "This is ice plant," he said, crouching to snap a photo. "If anything, you did us a favor. I'll clear this in my report." That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. 1 week later, I caught Priscilla herself on camera. She was standing just beyond the property line, pointing something toward my house in progress. When I zoomed in on the footage, I saw the device, a laser rangefinder. She was measuring distances. I confronted her the next day when I saw her parked near the cul-de-sac, scribbling into the clipboard again. "Lose something?" I asked, stepping between her and the lot, her eyes narrowed. "Just verifying the setback compliance." Someone has to keep the neighborhood standards in check. Not your neighborhood, not your standards, you're trespassing. "I'm on public property," she said, motioning to the street. "Sure you are," I said, holding up my phone, "which is why I'm recording this. And why the county now has a file on you, including the drone footage you submitted anonymously." She blinked, once, just long enough for the mask to slip. "You think you're clever," she said. "But we'll see what the Environmental Board has to say, or the Historical Society, or the media. People don't like it when outsiders come in and fence off the beach." So that was the angle, public pressure. If she couldn't win legally, she'd stir up outrage. Paint me as the villain, the greedy outsider who blocked families from their sacred sand. I needed to flip the script fast. That weekend, I invited a few neighbors from the adjacent street, people unaffiliated with Seabreeze Shores, for a cookout. We grilled, talked shop, and I told them exactly what was going on. One of them, a local surf shop owner named Illy, nearly choked on his burger. "They've been trying to push access through here for years," he said. "Used to be old man Hal's place. They harassed him till he moved to Ocala, said they'd take care of the property, and then tried to turn it into a community boardwalk." Another neighbor, Maria, nodded. "They posted on Nextdoor claiming they had beachfront restoration plans, but they never got permits. Then they said the land was abandoned. I asked if they'd be willing to give statements. They agreed without hesitation. By Tuesday, Marcus had drafted a cease and desist backed by witness affidavits. We also filed a complaint with the County Ethics Board, citing abuse of zoning influence and harassment. The drone footage, Priscilla's unauthorized surveying, and the trespassing teens, all of it went in the packet. Then the real bomb dropped. Late Thursday afternoon, a deputy called me. "We executed a warrant on a drone registered to a Seabreeze Shores Board member," he said. "Turns out it wasn't just your lot they were filming. They flew over 3 other properties. One of them had a minor sunbathing in the backyard. Parents are pressing charges." That pushed the investigation into criminal territory. By the following Monday, 2 HOA board members had resigned. The third lawyered up. Priscilla, she doubled down. Claimed she was being politically targeted and called a community meeting to rally support. I went, of course. The room was packed, maybe 50 people crammed into the Seabreeze Shores clubhouse. Priscilla stood at the front, framed by a giant printout of a beach access plan complete with little benches and native plantings. She launched into a speech about restoring community values and preserving generational access. When she opened the floor for questions, I raised my hand. "Tobias Zane," I said. "Owner of the beachfront lot this whole thing's about." The room went quiet. "I have a copy of my property deed here. I also have photos, certified footage, and legal documents proving there's no easement, no right-of-way, and no historical claim to access through my land. What I do have is evidence of wiretapping drones, trespassing, vandalism, and surveillance." I held up a folder. "And I've filed a criminal complaint with the county, including witness statements from your own neighbors." Priscilla's face drained of color. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I turned to the crowd. "You want beach access? Petition the county for a new trail. I'm not your solution, and I'm not your victim." No one applauded, no one booed, they just stared. And slowly, people began to leave. By the end of the week, the HOA issued a public retraction of their access claim. The county closed the code enforcement case, and construction resumed without a single interruption. But I wasn't finished yet. 3 weeks passed without incident. The foundation cured, framing went up, and my crew began setting roof trusses by the time the next move came. I should have known Priscilla wouldn't go quietly. Losing face at the community meeting only galvanized her behind the scenes. But this time, she didn't come at me directly. No more letters. No more signs. What came next was uglier and far more dangerous. It started innocently enough. A county inspector named Saul Gentry stopped by the site late one morning. He was courteous, clipboard in hand, but asked to walk the perimeter for a routine stormwater compliance review. I wasn't worried. I'd already filed all the necessary drainage plans and had my erosion control in place. I walked with him, answering questions until he paused near the southeast corner. "Huh," he said, kneeling to examine a shallow trench. "You guys install this diversion channel?" I frowned. "No, that's been there since the pre-grading phase. It was natural runoff." "We flagged it for fill before the pour." He tilted his head. "Because someone submitted a complaint claiming you excavated a graywater drainage line and redirected it toward the dunes. That would be a big violation." I stared at him. "A complaint from who?" He tapped the form on his clipboard. "Anonymous submission, but it included photos time-stamped." I didn't need to see them to know they were doctored. I offered to show him the site plans and every photo we'd taken during excavation. Saul agreed, following me to the trailer we'd set up for site management. I pulled out the binder and laid out the progression photos. He studied them in silence, flipping pages slowly. "This doesn't match the complaint," he said finally, "and your surveyor signed off. So we're good." He stood. "I'll file it closed, but watch your back. Someone's working hard to get you shut down." That night, I reviewed the footage from the week before. Sure enough, a man in a blue windbreaker had crept onto the property just past midnight. He spent 10 minutes near that southeast trench, then left. He didn't touch anything, just took photos and left. I couldn't make out his face, but the jacket had a stitched patch near the shoulder. HOA maintenance. I forwarded the clip to Marcus and he added it to the growing file. But the next move wasn't legal. It was criminal. 3 days later, my foreman called me just after dawn with a tone I hadn't heard before. "You need to get down here now. Someone sabotaged the site." When I arrived, the smell hit me first sharp, chemical and unmistakable. Diesel. 2 5-gallon cans had been dumped over the pallet of insulation and into the exposed subfloor. The vapor was thick, clinging to the air like a warning. We had to halt all work immediately. The fire marshal came out and roped off the area while a hazmat unit assessed damage. The materials were ruined. Worse, the structural wood beneath was saturated. We'd have to cut it out, replace it, and delay everything by at least 2 weeks. The marshal took it seriously. He filed a criminal investigation and collected samples. I handed over the security footage again. This time, it showed a figure in a hoodie scaling the temporary fencing around midnight, carrying a plastic container. The image wasn't perfect, but it was clear enough to get a make and model on the vehicle they arrived in. A silver SUV with a Seabreeze Shores decal on the rear window. 2 days later, the sheriff confirmed it. The vehicle belonged to Lance Dorsey, husband of HOA board member Dana Dorsey. Lance was arrested on charges of arson, trespassing, and criminal mischief. When deputies served the warrant, they found more than just the clothes he wore that night. They found a folder detailing other soft targets notes on other properties the HOA wanted to reclaim under community necessity. My lot was at the top of the list. That folder, along with the drone activity and altered photos submitted to the county, painted a picture that went far beyond harassment. The state's attorney got involved. Within a week, subpoenas were issued for Priscilla, Dana, and 2 other board members. Their HOA meetings stopped. The clubhouse was shuttered. The Seabreeze Shores HOA website went offline overnight, but that wasn't the end, just the beginning. A whistleblower came forward. His name was Greg Lindell, a former board member who'd resigned quietly 2 months prior. Greg approached Marcus and offered a trove of emails, audio recordings, and even a recorded Zoom meeting where Priscilla laid out what she called the Strategic Access Initiative. It was audacious. She'd proposed fabricating easements through usage patterns, staging community events near my lot to create the appearance of long-term access, and lobbying local reporters to frame the story as one of wealthy outsider excludes public. The drone flights were part of that plan. So were the surveillance photos, the fake environmental complaints, and the pressure on code enforcement. Greg had audio of her saying, "We just need to make it look like they're the aggressors, and we're just preserving what's always been ours. Once public sentiment turns, the county will fold." Instead, the county opened a formal probe into the HOA. The district attorney announced charges against Priscilla and Dana for conspiracy to commit property crime and filing false claims with county agencies. Lance's arson charge was upgraded to a felony. And the HOA, it was placed under temporary receivership by a court-appointed administrator. Still, my lot was a mess. Construction was on hold pending environmental clearance after the diesel spill. Insurance was slow to come through, and the hazmat cleanup stretched into the 2nd month. But neighbors kept showing up, not just to watch, but to help. Illy from the surf shop brought water and sandwiches to the crew. Maria helped circulate a petition calling for a full audit of the HOA's finances. Turns out, Priscilla had used community funds to pay for the drone equipment, the printing of access signs, and even a private investigator to dig into my background. The petition gained over 300 signatures in 5 days. The court-appointed HOA administrator, a retired municipal judge named Clara Wexley, held an emergency town hall. I went, more out of curiosity than anything else. She stood at the front of the room and laid it out, calm and firm. Seabreeze Shores, HOA has violated its charter by engaging in activities beyond the scope of its authority. We are launching a full forensic audit of its expenditures and will be reviewing all board actions from the last 5 years. Someone from the back asked whether Priscilla could return. Clara didn't hesitate. She's permanently barred from holding any HOA position in the state of Florida, and depending on the result of the financial audit, she may be facing restitution claims. The room broke into low murmurs. Some people were shocked, others looked relieved. I just sat back, arms crossed, letting it all sink in. Later that evening, Marcus called with an update. "Looks like the DA wants to offer you a victim impact statement," he said. "They're pushing for the maximum on the conspiracy charges. Could help if you want to take civil action." I didn't answer right away. I was standing on the edge of the lot watching the waves roll in. The cleanup crew had just left. The land was quiet again. Not peaceful exactly, but getting there. "Let's file," I said finally. "I want every dime back. And I want that HOA charter rewritten. No more secret meetings. No more weaponized bureaucracy." Marcus chuckled. "Already drafting it." I turned back toward the framework of my future home. The roof was half done, but it was standing. And this time, no one was going to tear it down. They tried to claim my land with lies, pressure, and sabotage. Now they were the ones losing everything. The last nail in the HOA's coffin didn't come from a courtroom or a camera. It came from a ledger. 2 weeks after the audit began, Judge Clara Wexley summoned a closed-door meeting with a handful of homeowners, including me, and 3 newly appointed interim board members. It was held at the County Annex building, far from the gated community's poison clubhouse. The room was sterile, fluorescent lit, with a single fan humming above a circular table. Clara didn't waste time. Her voice was calm, but her words hit like falling bricks. "We've uncovered significant financial irregularities. The former HOA board redirected over $80,000 of community funds into private accounts, using a series of shell landscaping contracts and fictitious consulting fees." One of the interim board members, a retired IRS agent named Harold, pulled out a stack of color-coded spreadsheets. "These vendors don't exist," he said, tapping a column labeled Coastal Environmental Design. "Payments were laundered through a P.O. box in Delray registered to a dissolved LLC. That LLC shares a mailing address with Priscilla Marlowe's sister." Clara placed a hand on the folder in front of her. "We've referred everything to the state attorney's office. Charges will be expanded to include wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to defraud homeowners." Harold looked at me. "They used your lot as the distraction. While everyone was busy fighting over fake beach access, they were draining the reserve fund." It made sense now, the desperation, the manipulative PR, the stage-managed complaints. My lot had been nothing more than a smokescreen, a convenient wedge to rile up support while they siphoned off dues and buried it behind fake invoices. "They got sloppy," Clara said. "Didn't expect anyone to push back hard enough to look under the rug." Another interim board member, Angela, a retired school principal with a sharp gaze, leaned in. "We're notifying every homeowner about the misappropriation. Some may want to pursue civil claims. The board's insurance won't cover fraud, so the restitution will come from personal assets." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. My satisfaction wasn't the shouted kind. That night I walked the perimeter of my lot, boots crunching softly over gravel. The framing crew had begun drywall installation, and a light wind rolled off the ocean. The house was becoming real now, not just an idea or a battleground. For the first time in months, there was nothing taped to the fence, no strangers lurking near the edge, no signs warning of imaginary trails. 3 days later, the lead investigator from the sheriff's department called to let me know the arrest warrants had been served. Priscilla, Dana, and Lance were all taken into custody without incident. The 4th board member, a man named Elliot who'd handled communications, had fled the state the day before and was picked up at a motel in Savannah. They didn't walk away in handcuffs from some dramatic raid. The deputies had simply knocked, handed them the charges, and walked them out into the daylight. Their mugshots hit the local news by sunset. The fallout spread fast. Homeowners flooded the county's complaint line with demands for restitution. Several families who'd previously sided with the HOA began organizing a class action lawsuit. I wasn't part of it. I had my own case already in motion, and now it had teeth. Marcus filed an amended claim that week, listing economic damages, legal costs, and emotional distress. He had no trouble getting a court date. Judges were eager to move quickly now that the criminal charges were public. At the hearing, Priscilla's attorney tried to argue that the board had acted with the community's best interest in mind, and that no irreparable harm was proven. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in a gray robe and tortoiseshell glasses, interrupted him mid-sentence. "You submitted false environmental claims, harassed a property owner through a coordinated campaign of misinformation, and funded it with stolen money. I'd say the harm is documented quite thoroughly. She ordered full restitution for my legal expenses and property damage, plus additional statutory penalties. The final number was just over $120,000. Priscilla's face didn't move when the judgment was read. Dana looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. Lance, who tried to play the role of the unaware husband, got the harshest sentence of all. The arson charge stuck. He was sentenced to 18 months in county lockup with 5 years probation. His plea deal required him to testify against the others. The community's new interim board voted to dissolve the HOA entirely within 60 days. With the fraud, the lawsuits, and the loss of insurance coverage, it couldn't sustain operations. The county agreed to take over basic maintenance of the public areas. The clubhouse was sold to recoup some of the stolen reserves. The buyers turned it into a surf school. When the demolition crew finally came to remove the last of the old HOA signs, I stood on my porch and watched. The sun was high, casting long shadows over the new asphalt. One of the workers waved. I raised a bottle in return. Ellie stopped by the following weekend with a gift. A framed aerial photo of the lot taken just before construction began with the words "Yours." No trespassing printed across the bottom. We hung it in the entryway. Maria started a neighborhood newsletter, unaffiliated with any board, just residents sharing updates and organizing beach cleanups. She dropped off the first issue herself, printed on blue recycled paper. The lead story was about the native dune grass restoration project she'd started with volunteers on the county-owned side, where it belonged. As for me, I finished the house. It took longer than planned, cost more than I budgeted, and tested every ounce of patience I had. But it stood. Strong, clean, and utterly unclaimed by anyone but me, on move-in day, Marcus brought over a bottle of champagne. He didn't say much. Just handed me the envelope with the final settlement check from the civil case and nodded. I opened it, glanced at the number, and set it aside. "What now?" he asked. I looked out at the sea. The old shortcut trail was gone, overgrown and fenced properly. No more markers, no more phantom claims. "Now," I said, "I live." Because they didn't just lose a legal fight. They lost the lie they built everything on, and I didn't just win. I buried them with the truth.